started. All right, and you guys should be able to see my screen. My name is Agustina, if we haven't met before, and I'm going to walk you through month 1 of your certification course. Just as an FYI, all these follow-up meetings are meant to help you with the assignments that you need to submit every month. So there's a few lesson plans and some videos that you need to submit. So for example, today, month 1 will help you with those lesson plans and those videos, understand the steps, the logistics, the materials that you need for month 1 requirements, month 1's assignments. And every month, every following month will be the same. I usually get the question from teachers in regards to what is the deadline to submit those assignments, to submit those requirements. And just to have an idea, I would say today we're going over month 1, and you probably signed up or will sign up to attend month 2 in a few weeks from now. So just to have, we don't have a specific due date, but just for you to have some sort of organization built into your schedule, plan for submitting the lesson plans or the assignments for month 1 before you attend the meeting for month 2. And plan to have the assignments for month 2 before you attend the meeting for month 3, and so on. I know that you guys went through your initial training either in November or December or January, meaning not at the beginning of the school year. And if you go through the certification requirements, it talks about all these follow-up meetings that we're going to have and how you have to submit all your assignments before the end of the school year. But that's not going to apply to you. The 8 months of follow-ups that we have are going to start counting from the moment that you attended that initial training. So if you attended initially on January, that's where your 8 months start. If you attended in November, that's where your 8 months start. And since we'll have the summer in the beginning, you can choose whether you want to attend meetings over the summer, whether you want to put in work over the summer, or if you want to kind of pause it and resume in the fall. That is up to you, but just know that you don't need to have that time limit of the end of the school year, because that's pretty close. So you don't need to worry about that deadline from that aspect. So
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Joey.
If we're not getting certified, we still, I mean, we'll work with a student otherwise, but we don't have to turn anything in, right? It'll be.
Correct. And you don't even have to attend these meetings if you don't want to. Or if you don't have the time and you prefer to, you know, just receive the recordings and watch them when you get a chance. If you get a chance, you can do that as well. The difference between going through the certification or not is just that if you're going through certification, you have to attend these follow-up meetings and you have to submit these lesson plans. If you're not, then you just attend or attended that initial training day, and that's that. But up to you. We have people that initially say, oh, I don't have time this school year to go through the certification, but maybe over the summer I'll be able to catch up some. Up to you. So I'll be following these slides. It's a PowerPoint, well, PDF actually, that I have, where I'll kind of read some things off of the page. I'll elaborate a little bit on what the slides say. And then I believe I have shared with you already, and if not, I will share with you after the training, this Google Drive folder where I keep all of the important files and materials for all the process of certification. So this file that I'm showing right now is included in that folder. I want to quickly go over it just so that we're aware of what it contains. Initially, the link that I shared with you takes you to this page where you see there's several subfolders, each of them for one of the months of the certification process. So if you go to month 1, these are all the materials that I'm going to make reference to today. The one that I was showing with the slides and the month 1 certification requirements, that's this one. And then there's other guides and the general requirements, just so you have an idea of what to expect in these folders. Additionally, if you look towards the end of the list of files and folders in this Google Drive section, you'll see this file that says recorded OG sessions. So once this recording is done, I'm going to add it here. But let's say that you wanted to venture into month 3, month 4, month 7, you have samples of other similar sessions that I've done recently. So you can just go ahead and watch those as well, if you wanted to. So I just wanted to mention that. Now, having that said, let's go into all these slides. So again, today is going to be month 1 of the certification course. And this is the agenda of the points that I plan to cover with you. We're going to review the specific requirements, the lesson plans, the videos that we need to submit. We're going to go over how you can create a Google Drive folder where you can add all these files and all these videos. And then from this point on, for every following month, you can just keep adding your files in there. We're going to go over how you can enroll a student into the software. As you probably already know, with your certification course, you have your own teacher account that gives you access to the Max Scholar software, and you have at least one student account that you can add. If your school or district purchased additional ones, then you can add more, but at the very least, you'll have one that you can add. So if you haven't done that yet, I'll walk you through the process of adding the student and giving them access. I'll also mention a little bit about how to adjust the settings on an account. Adjusting the settings means, moving levels up or down, giving them access, removing access, and so on. And then I'll talk about the placement test. There's an online version of the placement test that is built into those student accounts that I was just talking about. And there's an offline version as well. Yes, Esther.
I'm sorry. Augustina. Hi, first of all, nice to meet you. I have a question because I know that the first month says it's the beginning sounds of, what if the placement test, like the student I have in mind tests onto phonograms?
So,
Hi, Kendra, were you able to confirm
hold on 1
this?
second. So
That's fine. So
think about the certification course and your actual implementation as two things that are related, but might be to an extent independent. You probably have one student in mind that you want to work with. That student may be starting at the alphabet or may be ready for the spelling rules. In reality, in your implementation, when you're working with your student, work on whatever they need to work on based on the placement test, based on your assessment and your judgment of where they need to be. But for the certification course, we still want to see your lesson plans for the alphabet, and we still want to see your lesson plan for the blends. It's pretty much to ensure that should you need to work on those skills with the students, you are prepared and you know how to do those lesson plans and you know how to deliver them.
Right, great, thank you.
Yeah, so you don't need to bring the student back if they're already past that. And also the opposite. We have a lot of, let's say, kindergarten teachers that go through this course. They're not going to reach the syllable types. They're not going to reach the spelling rules. So like I said, the lesson plans you can write because that's just you sitting with your computer or with your paper and writing them out. But when it comes to working with a student, when it comes to those videos that you need to submit, that's where you'll become a little bit creative. Can I borrow a student? Can I just record myself and pretend that there's a student in front of me? You definitely can make those adjustments. But like I said, in real life, work on whatever they need to be working on. And for your certification, just check the boxes off the lesson plans that you need to send as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, no problem. All right, so like I said, we'll go over the placement test that we were just talking about, the online version and the offline version, and then we'll leave a few minutes at the end for some questions in case we haven't addressed those as we go. So first thing that I want to go over are the requirements for certification for month 1. Month 1, we're going to be dealing with the basic sounds, the consonants and short vowels. So there's 2 lesson plans that we need to submit. You probably talked about and saw these lesson plans on your initial training. It's 9 steps on each lesson plan. So we want a 9-step lesson plan for the sounds P, F, and T, A, and a 9-step lesson plan for the sounds S, R, C, K, E. Now you'll see that the requirements, I just took a screenshot of that part of the requirements, but it says you must submit the fully filled in lesson plan as well as students' work. Students' work can be dictation pages, index cards, fluency timing charts, anything that the students write or do that you can take a picture of and sort of document that way is considered students' work and will work. And when it comes to the fully filled in lesson plan, when you saw on your initial training that lesson plan template, it was 9 steps with a bunch of empty boxes. All of those boxes need to be filled in. And then once again, in reality, maybe when you're working with your student, the lesson plan template has 15 sight words, but maybe with your student, you're only going to cover 5 because that's what they are able to do at that time. However, your lesson plan should have all 15. So that if you reach that point in time that your student is ready to take on more, you will be ready and you will be prepared with the content already there. So we have 2 lesson plans that we need to submit for 2 different groups of sounds. And then there's 2 videos. One of the videos is to show the sound blending drill. And another one of the videos is to show the teaching of the sight words. Think of these videos as just short clips. You don't need to worry too much about the quality of them, about the setup. You can do it just with a phone. And it could be 15 to 30 second clips where you record yourself with the student, if you can, doing those specific steps or doing those lesson plans as requested in the certification requirements. These videos, keep in mind, they're to evaluate you, not the student, not their performance, but yours, your ability to understand the step, to use the proper materials, to use the right wording when you're introducing things. So that's what we're going to focus on when we go over those videos. So in short, quick recap for month 1. We need 2 lesson plans and 2 short videos. Now let's start going over those lesson plans step by step. Oops, went too far. So that we are familiar with what the steps entail, what materials I'm going to need. And also I've added some tips for not only your implementation, but also for those videos, what things you should include in them. So there's 9 steps. Give me one sec. All right, and the first step is the visual kinesthetic drill. Before actually getting to the steps, I just want to make a quick reference as to where you can get that template, and you have a few options. Let me just mute myself until this meeting starts because I have the background noise. Give me one second. All right, we'll try to make it, we'll try to make it through. So let me go back to where I was going into. The lesson plan template that I keep talking about, the lesson plan template that you'll need to write your lesson and then submit it, can be found on several places. You have your teacher manuals, you can find it there. You'll also find supporting materials for every step of that lesson plan in there. But for me, the easiest, quickest, simplest way to get that template and any other supporting materials is here on your dashboard. Your dashboard, as you know, is your teacher site. Your Max Scholar account takes you there. And if you click on the materials section here, you'll see there are several sub-sections or sub-tasks. The first one is Max Fonts. Hold on one second, sorry.
I'm trying to get a Got it.
All right, I think now we're good. So on the material section, under Maxonics, the first file that you have there, that's where you can get the template. Let me just open it up so you see how it looks like when you take it directly from the site. And the screenshots that I'm showing on my slides, this is where I took them from this template. So this is a file that was just downloaded. The first page has the 9 steps of the lesson plan, instructions, mentions of the materials that I need for each step. I'm about to go over them one by one. Then the next few pages have a sample of what that lesson plan looks like when it's filled in. So this is a lesson plan for the SRCKE, which is one of the lesson plans that you need to submit for this month 1. It's not fully complete, so you'll see that here, those things need to be replaced with actual letters. This needs to be replaced with actual words, but you have the start of that lesson plan already here. And then towards the end, you have a completely empty template. This is the one that you can just reproduce and use to write all your phonics lesson plans. And when I say all your phonics lesson plans, that means your lesson plans for month 1, month 2, and month 3. So for the first 3 months, this is the same template that you'll use. The difference is what sounds you're going to be covering. The steps will be the same, but on month 1, you're going to go through consonants and vowels. On month 2, you're going to go through blends, and month 3, you're going to go through digraphs. But for each of them, you're going to use that same template. Now, each step of this lesson plan has a number. Step 1 is a visual drill. Step 2 is a tactile drill, etc. If you look back at your list of materials, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, you'll see that most of the files here have a number at the beginning as well. That number is the step of the lesson plan that material goes along with. So if you need supporting materials for step 1, look for number 1. If you need supporting materials for step 5, look for step 5, and so on. That's why I said that the easiest, simplest way to get that template and to fill in that template is to go through the materials, because you have pretty much every step listed there. So now let me go back to the presentation, and now we'll start going step by step. The first step is the visual kinesthetic drill. I want to read the instructions. They say, use sound cards to introduce each letter or sound. When it says sound, we're referring to blends or digraphs, which are month 2 and month 3 of the certification. We're going to introduce the letter, picture, and sound that it makes. We're going to flip the card with each prompt while saying, this is the letter. We'll flip the card, as in, we'll say the name of the picture. We'll flip the card again, and we're going to say the sound that that letter makes. Our sound cards, you got them probably before the training, and they have a letter in the front, a picture in the back. You should have your letter cards, your blend cards, and your digraphs cards. So when you say, or when we say flip the card, this is what it means. Show the letter, as you say, this is the letter P, as in panda. It makes a sound P. Now, what I did on my boxes, and remember this is just a snapshot from that template, I filled in those empty boxes with the letters that I'll go over and the prompt words. In other words, the pictures that are in the back. So I have the S as in sun, the R as in rain, etc. My lesson plan, think about it as your script. That's what you're following. You don't need to memorize anything. You can just follow your script and guide the students throughout. Now, at the bottom, you're going to see, at the bottom of my slide, you're going to see some of those tips that I was mentioning. We're going to hold each card up as we say the letter, picture, sound. And something important that you should always remember in general in your lessons, and especially when it comes to the Order in Gillingham, you always want to follow that format of I do, we do, you do. Think about that for your video as well. Whenever you're required to do videos, make sure that you incorporate that. That's one of the things that we're going to take into consideration. I do means you as the teacher, you're demonstrating something first. I'm doing it, you're not supposed to do anything, but just pay attention to what I do. Then comes the we do portion. We do is me and the students. The teacher and the students are doing something together, or you're prompting the students to repeat after you right away. You can still monitor them, you can still give them feedback. And then it's the you do portion. You, meaning the student, is now doing things independently. So if we're talking about the visual drill with our sound cards, the I do part would be, this is the letter P, as in panda, it makes a sound. The we do portion would be me telling you, okay, now let's do it together. This is the letter, and we would say P. As in, we would say panda. It makes a sound, we would all make the sound at the same time. And then the you do portion would be me just prompting you or asking you, what's the name of this letter? You say P. What's the name of this picture? You say panda. And what's the sound that the letter makes? You say P. So we'll do that format of I do, we do, you do, letter, picture, sound for each of the letters in that group. Remember, you have 2 lesson plans to fill in. One of them is for the P, F, N, T, A. And the other one is for what we're seeing right now on my screen, the SRCKE. Now, if we move to step 2, that is the tactile auditory sound drill. There's a bunch of words there on the screen. I'm just going to summarize it. On the tactile drill, it's where we show the students how to trace the letters. So we're always going to start with big hand movements, finger in the air and tracing in the air. Then we're going to start narrowing it down. We're going to go to the finer motor drills. So let's say that I'm doing the first letter here, the S, which is around, turn, and around. The first part of the tactile drill, I'm just going to hold my finger up and I'm going to go around, turn, and around. Then I'm going to have my students do it with me. Remember that I do, we do, you do, and then I'll have them do it by themselves. Now I'll do another exercise with the tactile instruction or with the tactile drill. This time we can have the students trace the letter with their finger on a textured surface. That textured surface can be kinetic sand. It can be a paper plate with sand or rice. It can be a Ziploc bag with paint or shaving cream. Whatever it is that you have at hand, it can be the desk, it can be their form, that they can run their fingers through and kind of feel that texture as they go, will be helpful for them. All these tactile drills and tactile exercises and tactile components really help the students get information and for that information to stick to their brain. So you'll see those tactile things, touching, tapping, tracing quite a bit throughout the lesson plan. So we start with the big hand motions, then we go to a textured surface, and then we go to pencil and paper and tracing the letter on paper. That's what that big paragraph says at the beginning. Remember the I do, we do, you do. Remember the big hand motions, textured surface, and then paper and pencil. And what I write in my empty boxes in my template, my lesson plan template, are the instructions on how to write each of the letters in that lesson plan. So I have the SRCKE and the instructions for each. Remember, you might not know this ahead of time, but you know that the tactile drill is step number 2. So you know that if you go to your material section in the dashboard and you look for the number 2, you'll find the directions here. Esther, you had a question?
Sorry, I had 2 questions and one you just answered.
Okay.
The other one is, what would the I do, we do, you do look like for tracing?
On the end.
So I do would be, let's say I'm doing P, would be down, up, around. And then
Yes.
we do, so let's do it together with me. Let's make the letter P.
And we both say down, up, and around.
And the you
And
do
then-
would be just, okay, now you show me it.
Yes, you want to see that they're tracing in the right direction, that they started from the top or from the bottom, that they're saying the words out loud correctly, because all of those things combined will ensure that eventually it's going to become automatic in their head and you're not going to have to prompt them and they're not
Okay.
going to have to remind themselves how
So they're going to be
trace
doing the
it.
movements and saying the words by
Correct.
themselves that they're, okay,
Correct.
thank you.
And a little pointer, just now from seeing you tracing the P. Something that we need to keep in mind when we're doing this, the demonstration specifically, is that your student usually is going to be facing you. So if you do this, you're teaching them a reversal. So up to you if you can make that conscious decision of, okay, for the P, I need to do it that way. Otherwise, it might be easier, and a lot of teachers just, give your back to the student, go to the side and just do like this, down, up, and around. Just make sure that you're conscious of which direction you're going so that you're not confused. All right, so that's what we have on step 2. At the bottom, my tips are, again, remember the I do, we do, you do, and to say the tracing instructions out loud every time. Like I said, eventually it will become automatic, but at this initial stage, you want to have them say it out loud. Yes, Joy.
So like after we do this lesson, because I know when we did the initial training, we practiced on the program. So after we do like the in-person lesson, then they go and do the program work. Is that correct?
So
Or-
that's a good question. So the lesson plan, the guided instruction has 9 steps, right? You're not going to do all those 9 steps in one sitting.
Right.
You're probably going to kind of break down that lesson into 3 parts, I would say. My personal suggestion is usually to do steps 1, 2, and 3, then 4, 5, and 6, and then 7, 8, and 9. So let's say that you go with my recommendation and you do steps 1, 2, and 3. There is a good spot for them to go into the software and work on the software. And or go into the student's workbook and complete a few worksheets there. You want to have the students kind of get the chance to hit every format. The student's workbook, the independent work on the software, and the guided instruction led by you. So what you can do is do this sort of like rotational model where you have some students here, some students there, meaning software, student workbook, and guided instruction, and then you rotate them so that they each can hit everything. But keep in mind that you're not going to do all 9 steps of the lesson plan, so you'll find those sweet spots where you say, okay, this is a good place to stop and do some software work about whatever that we just saw, the introduction to the SRCKE, for example.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so step number 3, and you'll see why I suggest that you can do steps 1, 2, and 3 and then cut. Here is where we do the sound dictation. Pretty much, we're introducing 5 to 6 letters on each lesson plan. So at this point that we went through each of them individually, we will start mixing them up together. They're still going to be introduced one by one, but we're going to mix them in a different order. So what we have to do here is dictate 10 letters or sounds to the students in random order. Sometimes you're going to repeat sounds, and you can also include previous sounds learned. Meaning, if you're doing the first lesson, which is the PFNTA, you're going to repeat those 5 letters over again to fill in all those 10 boxes, because that's the only set of sounds that you've taught. But when you move on to the SRCKE, you can use the SRCKE and the PFNTA. And when you move on to the BGMLI, you can use the BGMLI and the SRCKE and the PFNTA. You're constantly adding more and more sounds to their students' bank, let's say. So the prompt would be, write the letter that makes the sound E as in egg, for example. Write the letter that makes the sound as in rain. And you want to make sure that they're in a random order, not in the same order that the software or the manual or the student workbook presents these letters, because you don't want the student to just memorize that it's always SRCKE, SRCKE, SRCKE. You want to mix it up and make sure that they're recognizing that sound and tracing it. So for the tips at the bottom of my page, the students should say, I'm going to replace that with could say. You might want them to say the instructions of how they're tracing the letters, just like they were doing on the previous step on the tactile drill. And this is where you can start gathering your students' work, those pictures of your students' work, because here you're dictating and you're expecting them to write down those letters. So you can take a picture of the letters that they write, and that can be submitted as part of your students' work. Now, the reason that I said that this might be a sweet spot to, cut this session and then have them go into the software or something else, it's because from this point on in my lesson, that's where it started getting a little bit harder. That's where I started blending sounds into words, learning about side words, sentences, control readers. So this is still, let's say, the easy part of the lesson. So that might be a good spot to stop it. Something that I forgot to mention, but it's very important. When you're doing steps 1 and 2, the visual and tactile drill, you're going to do those steps for each letter in that group before moving on to step 3 and beyond. Meaning, I'm going to do steps 1 and 2 for the S, steps 1 and 2 for the R, C, K, E, and only then, after I've introduced letter, picture, sound, after I've traced the letters, etc., only then I'll move on to step 3, because of course I have to have exposure to each letter before I can recognize one from the other and mix it up. Sorry, 1 second. All right, so when we get to step 4, that is where we have the sound blending and tapping, or sound blending or tapping. Here you can use your alpha chips. Those are the ones that look like this. You have 1 letter on each chip. Or you can use finger tapping like this. For either option that you choose, the exercise or the logic is the same. We want to give the student a word. Usually it's going to be a CVC word, consonant, vowel, consonant, short vowels at that. And we're going to ask them to sound out each of the letters and then blend those into a word. So if my word is set, I would do et, set. If my word is pet, I would do pet, pet. If you have your alpha chips, then the idea is that they take all the relevant letters, put them in the right order. Let's say that my alpha chips are here. I would tap each one of them. Et, set. That's what the sound blending or tapping means. And my boxes are filled in with those letter combinations, those real words or nonsense words that I've asked my students or will ask my students to form the words for. On my tips at the bottom of the page, you'll see your video should show the student saying the word one at a time and then tapping them out while blending the sounds together into a word. Ideally, your video should include both methods of sound blending, the alpha chips and the finger tapping. But again, you can improvise, make things work based on your specific scenario. And then we get to step 5. Step 5 is the fluency. Here we're going to use a list of words and we're going to time the students for 60 seconds. What we want them to do is to read from that list of words continuously, as long as there's time on the clock. And what you want to do is to keep count of how many words the students read in total and how many mistakes they make. At the end of those 60 seconds, and again, they're going to be reading continuously. At the end of those 60 seconds, you're going to give them a score with how many words they read correctly. So this step, step 5, the fluency, is the only step on your lesson plan that you're not going to be able to plan for ahead of time. You're not going to fill it in because you need to have an actual student and time them and give them a score. So every other step, you can fill in all the boxes. For step 5, you need to wait until you're actually doing the lesson to give the student a score. And what you would write down in those boxes is the name of your student and the score. You'll see it says 13 WPM. That stands for words per minute. So whenever you see on your teacher manual or in the student's workbook or in the software, the letters WPM, it always has to do with the fluency. That's what it means, words per minute. And we're only giving them credit for the correct words that they read. at the bottom of my slide for the tips, you can do a practice run, and I'm going to change that to you should probably do a practice run before timing the students, just so that they know, what direction they have to read, just so they know that you will be timing them, but they can have a practice run to kind of get warmed up. And when it comes to students' work, you can include the fluency worksheet, the list of words, and the tracking chart that you use to score them. So let's say that I don't know where the fluency word list is. I don't know what the tracking chart looks like. So what I'll do is look at the step of my lesson plan. I'm on step 5 for fluency. I'm going to go to my material section, scroll down to where I see the number 5, and you have all your word lists here, your expectations of how many words should be read, your chart that you can just print out. So like I said, you'll have your empty template, and for some of those steps, when you're filling out the boxes, you're going to be like, what was this again? Just look at the number of the step, go back here, and you'll have the information that you need. So after step 5, we have step 6, which is sight words. We're going to introduce sight words anywhere between 5 to 10, 15 if you can. We're going to write them in red because we want to differentiate them from words that we sound out. Remember, one of the previous steps, step 4, asked my students to use their alpha chips or finger tapping to blend sounds together. Sight words don't quite work that way. I just need to learn and read and memorize these words. So that's why we write them in a different color, in red. And there's different ways that you can use to introduce sight words. I'm going to mention 3. They're all in your teacher manual, and you probably saw them all on your initial training as well. But here is one. You can just use plain old index cards and a red marker. You're going to write the word and you're going to spell it. Sight words, we don't sound out, we spell. So this is a word, the, T-H-E, the. And I have a few of them, my index cards with my red marker. You can have your students make their own index cards. If they do, take a picture, that's students' work. Another way to do sight words is with our plastic canvas. And you can use either an index card or put this in between pages in a notebook. And then you have the plastic canvas, your paper, and a red crayon. With that red crayon, you're going to trace the letters. And remember, we're going to spell. So this is the word with, W-I-T-H. As the student is tracing with the crayon, they feel those bumps. Once the word is written out, they can run their fingers through and feel those bumps. And again, anything that gives them that tactile feeling, that tactile exercise really helps them internalize the information. So one way is index cards with markers. Other way is plastic canvas with my red crayon. And another way is the easiest one because you don't need any additional materials. You can just do arm tapping. So remember, this is sounding out the letters and blending them into a word. When I'm doing arm tapping, I'm spelling. So let's say the word is down, D-O-W-N, down. Let's say the word is the, T-H-E, the. And your students will do the same. Remember that I do, we do, you do applies here as well. You can use more than one of those methods. It might make it easier if you have a group of students. Same thing with the alpha chips. You're not going to have every student manipulate alpha chips at the same time, but they can all do the finger tapping. Maybe you don't have enough index cards or markers for everybody, but they can all tap here in their arm to spell the word. So I mentioned some of the tips that are at the bottom of my slide. I'm going to go ahead and repeat them. You can get a suggested list of sight words from the material section of your dashboard. You'll look for number 6. And you can take a picture of your students' index cards or their paper in their notebook to submit a student's work. And for your video, make sure that you include, if not all, at least 2 of the methods that I just mentioned for going over sight words. Then we get to step 7, the spelling dictation. In other words, word dictation. We're going to choose 10 words from the list of words that we used on step 5. Step 5 is the fluency drill. Remember, I could get that list of words from the material section. So I'm going to choose 10 words from there at random, and I'm going to dictate them to the students. The wording that I use would be write the word pat, at, pet. Write the word set, at, set. And the students are going to write it down. You can reuse the words that you used in step 5. You can reuse the words that you used in step 4, which was a sound blending. Just keep in mind that the exercise is different, even if you're using the same exact words. Step 4, I'm tapping and blending, that's it. Step 7, I am hearing the sounds, the words, and then writing them down. Remember that you can use real words and nonsense words, and the sounds are cumulative. So if I'm on the SRCKE, I can use any letter combination using the SRCKE and the previous lesson, PF and TA. And so on, as you advance more and more, you have more sounds to choose from or more sounds to add. And then at the bottom, my tips are that for your video, you should include the SOS strategy. That is part of your teacher manual as well. That stands for the simultaneous oral spelling, SOS. Pretty much it's that you're going to say the word that you want them to form. Let's say the word is set. You're going to ask the students how many sounds they hear. So at that point, they can tap out at 3. And then they're going to tap it out at set and write it down. So that's what the simultaneous oral spelling or SOS strategy stands for. Say the word, ask the students how many sounds they hear, have them tap it out, and then have them write it down. Whatever they write, remember, you can take a picture and keep adding on to your students' work. Something that I didn't mention again, I mentioned it a while ago, a few slides. Remember that we're not going to do all 9 steps in one sitting. My recommendation was to do steps 1, 2, and 3, and then 4, 5, and 6. So after the side words is another one of my suggested breaking points for this lesson plan, and then you can continue to step 7, 8, and 9. So step 8 is the sentence dictation. We're going to dictate 5 to 10 sentences for the students to write down on a paper or a notebook or their student workbook. We're going to say the sentence out loud, ask the students to repeat the sentence, ask them how many words they hear, and then have them write it down. So for these sentences, keep in mind that you are 8 steps deep into this lesson. You have a specific set of sounds and letters that you're working with, words that you blended with those sounds, side words that you introduce. So all of those things can become sentences or help you form those sentences. Make sure that you think about it when you're writing these sentences out and planning for those sentences, that you'll dictate, include those side words that you just did on step 6, include those words that you had on step 4 and step 7. Make sure that those sounds appear quite a lot. The SRCKE specifically for this lesson, of course, you're going to need additional words and you're going to need additional sounds, but make sure that at least those appear. Now, when it comes to the sentence dictation and actually any exercise where your students are required to write, in this case, write the sentences, you also want to go over another strategy that's also part of your teacher manual, called the COPS strategy. That is a self-check exercise for whenever students need to write anything, a sentence, a paragraph, a word. And once they write it, when you tell them to check for the COPS, that means that they're going to go back to what they wrote and check for capitalization, organization, punctuation, and spelling. So if I catch any mistakes, I will circle them, then rewrite my sentence. It's like an added step of accountability for the students before they submit that work to you. Yes, Esther.
What is meant by organization? Is that the order of the words or
Correct.
the size of the writing on the paper? Or...
In this case, for the COP strategy, it refers to the order of the word within the sentence.
Okay, thank you.
If you're thinking about a paragraph, you can also take it a little bit higher, organize my thoughts within the paragraph. But in this basic level, it means the order of the words within the sentence. And then again, since they're reading, you can take a picture of that and submit it as students' work. And then that would take us to the last step of our lesson, which is the control readers. Here, we're going to have a short story that kind of wraps everything up. Those words, those sentences, those sounds, those side words will be included in the short story or a few sentences at a time. The idea is that we want the students to read with expression, hopefully increase their fluency as they read as well. And like I said, the passage should include those letters, words, and side words that you've covered in this lesson and or previous lessons as well. For the control readers, you have the stories that are in the software, the stories that are in the students' workbook, or you can come up with an original story. Remember that you don't necessarily want the students to just memorize, the same stories in the software, the same stories in the student workbook. The same story is there when I'm doing the direct lesson plan. So in order to kind of spice it up, you can come up with your own original story, ask the students to come up with an original story using 5 of the words that you covered in this lesson. You can kind of adapt it that way. So those are our 9 steps. Remember that we're going to have 9 steps for the PFNTA, 9 steps for the SRCKE, and those are the 2 lesson plans that you need to submit for your certification. But if in your classroom you're actually covering the entire alphabet, then you would do the PFNTA, the SRCKE, and 3 additional lesson plans. So to cover the entire alphabet, it's a total of 5 lesson plans. Just so you know, and again, you can refer to your teacher manual, but the lesson plan will be the same. You'll follow the same template, and the software follows the same logic, the same steps. The student's workbook follows the same sequence as well. Each one of those formats, however, has a little bit extra. The guided lesson has some things that the software does not. The software has some things that the student workbook has not. So for the most part, those steps will overlap, but each format that you use will provide a little more drill and practice in a different way for the students. So now let me go over the whole Google Drive section. I have written instructions here. This is more for your reference after the training. I'm not going to go point by point here. I assume most of you know how to create a Google Drive folder, but you have step-by-step instructions here anyways, just in case. The idea is that you're going to create that Google Drive folder with your name, the name of your school, and you're going to start adding all of your lesson plans, student works, videos, etc. to that folder. That folder you're going to share with this email address, ogcertification@gmail.com. Yes, you can send things to me, but what I'll do is forward it to this address. So just to save time, just make sure that your things are shared there. What I do suggest is that every time that you add something new, shoot a quick email to OG Certification, just because we don't get a notice when a file is added to an existing folder. So just let us know, like, hey, I added my lesson plan for month 3, and then we'll ensure that you get feedback, corrections, suggestions, if appropriate. So what I added on this slide is how to create a folder, how to add files to that folder, and how to share that folder with others. Remember, I'm going to send you guys probably tomorrow, if not Friday, the recording of the session, as well as all of these shared materials that you can go and look back at. Now let's talk about enrolling a student into the software. If the student is already enrolled, you can disregard this next bit. But if you don't have a student enrolled, in order to do that, you can actually enroll the student on your own, or you can send their name and grade to ogcertification@gmail.com and we'll enroll them for you. But pretty much when you log into your teacher account, you're going to see the option of settings for students. When you click on that, you have the option to create a new account, and you're going to have to enter all of these little bits of information to create the account. It's going to look like this. So you enter the username, the student's name, whatever password you want to assign to them, their grade, and you add them to your class. Once you create it, once you hit save or create, that account is ready for use right away. And the first thing that they'll have to do is actually a placement test. You don't need to manually assign the placement test. It's already built into the account. So as soon as you create that account and the student logs in, there's no other option but to go through that placement test. Now, on this slide, I mentioned a little bit about the placement test, and here at the bottom, you'll see that I put a link to a guide that walks you through changing settings on your student's account. If you wanted to opt out of the placement test, for example, you could. If you wanted to change their passwords, if you wanted to prevent them from going into any other program other than the phonics, meaning hide all the other programs. You can do all those things. And on this guide that you can download here, you'll have step-by-step instructions as to what each setting means. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention is the placement test. I know that Esther, you've had some exposure to it at least. So there's the online version of the placement test. Depending on your student's grade, remember when you're creating the account, you had to choose the grade of your students. So depending on their grade, they're going to have either 2 placement tests or 1 placement test. If the students are in K through 2, they get a phonics placement and then a reading placement. If they're on 3rd grade and above, they only get the reading placement. But remember that I mentioned you have a guide where you can adjust settings. This is one of the settings that you can adjust. You can opt into tests or you can opt out of tests. And whatever results the students get determine which sections or how many sections, what level of the program they'll have access to. And you can always override that as well if you disagree with where they ended up. All right, so sorry, I went back where I meant to go forward. And then the last slide here refers to the offline placement test. This one has to do with phonics specifically. You can click into this link that I'll send you to download the test, the instructions. It's also part of this Google Drive, this Google Drive folder that I'll share with you. So here you have everything that has to do with the placement test, a sample of what the alpha chips look like when I'm using them. Again, the instructions on how to create a Google Drive folder, a template for the phonics lesson plan, your requirements for the entire certification course, the presentation that I've been scrolling through, and that guide for guiding you through changing the settings. So everything is there. When it comes to the offline placement test, it just requires for you to be there all along so that you can score it. So you'll decide whether you want to do online, offline, both, or neither, and just manually assign the student where you want them to be. And then that's that. On this last slide, the link is a link to this Google Drive folder. So it all kind of takes you back here. This is where you'll have all the information, all the materials, lesson plans, etc., not only for this month, but for upcoming months as well. So at this point, I'm going to open the floor, see if there's any questions, comments, feedback, anything that I can help with at this point. Remember that if you're going to submit the assignments, there's no set due date, but I would say just to have an idea in mind, plan to submit them before you attend the meeting for month 2.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
So, two questions. The first question is, we can just pick any of the 2 videos, because there were a couple of times where it said to record a video. So we could just pick any of the 2 videos to submit.
So for this month 1, it's 2 clips that you need to do. One is for the sound blending and one is for the side work.
Okay.
You can choose which lesson.
Okay.
You don't have to do it for both of the lessons that you're submitting.
Okay. And then, because I'm not in the classroom, so long. I mean, I guess it depends on the student, huh? How long each like segment or like group of lessons might take.
Yeah. So for that, yes, it depends on the student, but I can give you like a generalization. Usually a lesson plan, remember it's 9 steps, and remember it's not just the lesson plan. You're having software work, you're having student workbook, etc. But usually it can take anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks to cover one lesson. On average, I would say it's 2.
Mhm.
I know that, if I have worked with teachers that teach kindergarten and they actually do 1 letter a week. That's the slowest kind of pace,
Mhm.
but usually it's going to take 2 weeks. Remember that you're going to break down those 9 steps into 3 sessions or so. Then you're going to want to incorporate the students' work, etc. So about 2 weeks.
Okay.
And we always talk about 20 to 30-minute sessions when we talk about, those little meetings that you have with the student.
But that's not including like online work. Is that's just
I would say including online
Okay.
work. Yeah.
okay? Okay. Good to know.
And also, just since you mentioned the usage, for the requirements of certification, there's requirement for students usage in the software and for teacher usage in the software. So another recommendation that I have is when you're sitting down to write your lesson plans and you're going to the material section, what I recommend that you also do is go to, how you have the button that says go to MyMax, where you can go to the student
Mhm.
site,
Mhm.
use that and do those phonics lessons that you're talking about. Because as you're doing that, your timer is going up and up and up and up. Meaning, get the usage out of the way while you're working on it as it is, as opposed to, having all your lesson plans submitted and then 6 months from now realizing that your count is 0 on your usage and then you're trying to overuse the software.
Yeah.
That's just a recommendation.
I
Yes,
have a
Esther.
question. Where can I find the requirements for software usage for certification?
So that should be on the certification requirements. Let me share my screen. I lost the word. My screen with you again. On this month 1 folder here, the OG certification and requirements, it's going to be at the very, very bottom. So you have month 1, it's what we talked about. 1, 2, 3, and then here. So it's 80 hours of independent student usage in the software. If you're just working with 1 student, that's going to be quite a lot. I
That's a
suggest that if you
lot.
already are doing your math and you know that you're not going to reach it, shoot an email to ogcertification@gmail.com and say, hey, I just have 1 student. I only see them as much time as I see them a week. It's going to be impossible for me to reach that time. Can I get an exception to get less hours? It happens.
And that's over the
So-
course of the whole 8 months.
Yes.
So that's about 10 hours a month.
In fact, it's 12 months because your account and the student's account is valid 12 months from when you first attended training. So you have those 12 months to reach that usage. But again, if you think that that's going to be too much, then you can write an email to request an exemption. Keep in mind that the students can also use the software at home, so they can kind of, build that usage then. And then there's 40 hours of direct instruction that's going to be offline. There is a little file that I added on the Google Drive folder where you can kind of keep a log of how many hours you do. And then 24 hours of teacher usage that is on your account.
And what is, that says guided lesson time through software. Can you explain
Yeah,
that?
so that you can use your account. Let's say that you have a smart board or a projector. You can log into your account and guide the students through. That counts as usage. Or like I said, as you're planning your lesson, do the lessons yourself, either or. As long as you're being exposed to those lessons and going through those lessons, the usage counts.
And is that through completion? Doing
What,
the
sorry?
lessons? Is that like will that like log if I do the lessons through to the end? Or
Even if
just,
you don't, even if
Okay.
you don't, it will.
because I've
The only
already
thing-
been using it, but
So you probably
okay,
have some time already. But the only thing that will not count is, let's say if you go into the phonics screen and you just leave it open, that's not going to count. But as long
okay,
as you're clicking through, even if you don't finish it, whatever time you were active in the program will count.
Okay, and where can I
Correct,
find
Dr.
that
Castillo,
count?
let me give them
Like,
a
does it
copy.
keep record that I can see?
So that only admin users can access it. If your school doesn't have a designated admin user, you can always write, again, OG certification is always your go-to to get an updated count of your hours.
Okay,
All right,
all right, thank you.
no problem. Any other questions that I can answer for you guys? All right, I think we're good for now then. I'll let you go. And like I said, either tomorrow or Friday, you're gonna get an email from me with the recording and all the relevant files that I mentioned. I will see you next time and feel free to reach out to us if you do have any questions that come up later on.
Thank
Have a
you.
good rest of the
Thank you.
day. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.